Hi, and welcome to the video. Now, anybody who's seen many of my videos on my YouTube channel, and thanks for watching by the way, will know that I'm a great believer in using generative AI as part of my genealogy research. But I know there's a lot of skeptics out there, and a lot of people just flat out refuse to use generative AI at all as part of their research because they believe there's a lot of problems with generative AI. And so a lot of points, they're right. There are a lot of problems with generative AI. It's not a perfect tool. So I wanted to do in this video is to explore all the problems with generative AI. So I believe if you understand what's going on with generative AI, you can become a better user and you will see the benefits. So you will get tied up with the problems with generative AI. There's problems with Google, there's problems with internet searches, and a lot of people get overcome with generative AI problems. So we'll look through about 12 or 13 different issues, if you like, of generative AI and what we can do about it. And this is part of the class that I teach at my local USF online learning center. And I'm going to use a PowerPoint, so I hope you don't get distracted by that, but it's probably the easiest way to present this information. So to the first point, AI doesn't think like us. AI generates outcomes, but it doesn't understand. There's no understanding of generative AI. We've not got there yet in terms of AI. So it doesn't think like a human. So that influences the way it responds to a lot of your questions. So what can we do about it? So you have to apply human judgment and critical thinking. Generative AI is not going to. And always treat the responses as suggestions, not conclusions. You're responsible for the output. AI is not responsible for the output. Google is not responsible for the information you take from it. So AI is not responsible for the information you get from it. So obviously don't use it to be your final decision. Don't cut and paste and take it as given. And certainly not if you're using it in a critical decision making like financial or medical. It should never be used like you'd never use WebMD, for instance, to diagnose an illness. And it can't verify the truth it can handle. From a perspective point of view, it doesn't know the difference between true or false. So if it's been trained on fiction, it won't know whether this is true or false. So its responses are based on the training data patterns, and the training data may be true or false. So again, as a user, it's up to you to find out, just like you would do from Google or the internet. You've got to fact check the AI responses, and you always cross check. I mean, as a genealogist, you would never take the first response. You'd always look at the provenance of the record you're looking at. So always cross-reference the information you're taking from generative AI. And then one of the things that throws a lot of people out is it can give very convincing incorrect answers. And to the last point, that's why you always have to verify what's going on. AI tends to want to please, tends to want to answer. You will very rarely get an answer from generative AI that says, I don't know the answer to this question. So you as the user have to determine whether this answer is correct or not. And it's something that throws a lot of people out. So one way around this is to ask it to provide sources and then verify the sources. It's always quite capable of making up sources. If citations are given, obviously check those if they exactly exist. And then you can actually ask the same question in various ways and see if the answers point to the same thing. Then we've heard a lot of people will say this, well, AI hallucinates, it fabricates facts. As we said, citations or details. It just frankly makes things up. And especially if you're in a long, complex conversation and you've been at the same thing, AI will tend to kind of get stumbling around a little bit. So again, we'll repeat this theme. Never assume it's 100% accurate. And use it as a starting point. It's always a great starting point. You would never take the first answer. Again, I keep going back to Google and Bing. You'd never take the first answer from Google or Bing in a search screen. So you'd never take the first answer and assume it's correct here. And if you're doing academic research, like if you're doing genealogy, you always consult the primary sources. One of the things, one of the aspects of genealogy is you always go back to the source. Even if you've seen a transcription, it's the same with with generative AI. You always have to go back to the source. Now, you may know that generative AI is being trained, but you won't necessarily know when it was trained. So if it was trained a few years ago, now it's getting a lot better at this because now the modern generative AI systems can go out and do a Google search and bring their responses up to date. But for many of them, if it was trained in 2023, it may not be aware of some academic changes, it may not be aware of some references and that kind of stuff. So you need to be kind of aware that if you've got time-sensitive data that was written about 6 months ago, generative AI may not be aware of it. That's sometimes not a problem for genealogists, to be honest with you. But if you're using generative AI with web searches, confirmed with sources it retrieves, most of the generative AIs now will tell you if it's searched and it will give you the sources. And be aware, if you can, about how and when the model was trained. And you can ask the generative AI system when it was trained, it will give you the answer. Now, one thing, and if we have time, I'll show you an example. Generative AI is a language model. Don't expect it to do advanced mathematics, complex calculations or anything like that. It may make mistakes and it may go completely off track. And so logic problems tend to throw it out because it's not designed to deal with that kind of logic. One thing I would say is that many of the newer releases of AI systems like ChatGPT have a logic model aimed at calculation. So you have to change the model. If you're using a paid version, it'll give you various models. You're going to use a model that is tuned to do logic. But if you're trying to do something, one of the ways around it would to break it down into smaller steps. Just go out and use a calculator, not even use Gen AI for this. And then if you're searching dates, check the historical timelines. If you're trying to say, oh, go back 100 years, make sure it's done the right calculations for you. Now, I've just finished a video about prompts, and there's a lot to it, and there's nothing to prompts, if you like. The better you write the prompt, the more information you give, the better the outputs. The quality of the Gen AI output is dependent on the prompt. And as I say, I've just released another video, 15 things to do to make a prompt. It's not complicated, most of it's common sense, but if you write a good prompt, you're going to get a really good answer. So it's got to be precise and structured. The more context and depth you provide, and then remember, generative AI is a conversation. So if the first prompt is not full of the information, you can add it in later on. And you can also ask AI to help you design an efficient prompt. You can ask AI to write the prompt for you. So if you're struggling to think about how that prompt would look, just ask AI. How should I structure a prompt to look for Irish immigration in the best way possible, and you'll get the answer. Now, AI is biased. All of them are biased, and if you lose a lot of generative AI, you tend to feel the quirks. I prefer ChatGPT because I'm used to it. Claude and the other ones give slightly different nuanced answers. So the training will give a bias, the background conversation will give a bias, and then most of the generative AI systems now have got personalization or retain some memory of the conversations, and that will influence the bias as well. So if you want a completely clean conversation, you have to go into the settings and clear out the memory, if you like, of the previous conversations. And in ChatGPT, that's called personalization. So as I said, I kind of got ahead of myself there a little bit. Review and reset personalization, and restart long conversation. So if you've got a very long conversation, the bias will come in. You've really got to go in and restart it if it gets too long. And you can ask for different perspectives. And as I said, the training data does matter. And we'll see if you're using AI systems, for instance, corporate AI systems that are being trained on corporate information, you'll quickly see how that is different to a generative AI system that comes vanilla. Now, this is a key one. Like a lot of things, don't put anything in there that is very private or confidential. It's unknown or unclear for most of the generative AI systems what the privacy measures are, so I just assume there are none. Just assume if you're putting stuff into generative AI, you're putting it for the world to see. Don't put anything of confidential nature at all. You know, I would totally avoid sharing personal, sensitive, and confidential information. Use AI services that you know. All right, ChatGPT, Google, Bing. Don't use AI systems, and this is a pet peeve of mine, don't use AI systems that originate from adversarial countries like DeepSeek or something that comes up from North Korea. You don't want to be using that. Use the ones that are US based or European based. So ensure that you know which model you're being presented with, because some will use different names, and stick to the ones that you know or can trust more than you would trust something that I'd say came from China. And then AI is tone deaf. It doesn't really understand emotional intelligence. It can misinterpret tone. So if you're reading a script or giving it something to summarize in the sarcasm in the document, it may not get it. You can actually clarify it to make the tone formal or friendly in terms of output. But when it's reading a document, if you're trying to get it to read a family story or a script, it may not understand some nuances, sarcasm, humor. We don't get each other's humor, do we? A lot of people don't understand sarcasm. So don't think for a minute that ChatGPT or any of the AI systems will really understand the nuances of human conversation. And then ChatGPT, generative AI, generates the answer each time. So if you ask it the same question in different conversations, you'll never get exactly the same answer because it's being regenerated every time. Most differences are really just in how the answer is expressed. But to get around this, use clear, unambiguous prompts. If you see some differences, you can ask AI to explain why they're different. And then if it's, again, a long conversation, just go ahead and create a new conversation, and then you can check for consistency there. And this is a pet peeve of mine, if you like. I don't get generative AI to write novels for me or narratives in any really shape or form, because it adds unnecessary fluff or irrelevant details. And again, I'll show you an example of that really quickly at the end. So ask ChatGPT to be concise, not answering one paragraph, answering a page. And now if AI over-explains, there's too much fluff in there, just go back and say, please give me a direct answer. And again, you must edit all the responses. As I said earlier, the response belongs to you and not to AI. So just again, look at this for a start, and then you become the editor of the response. And I think I've mentioned this a few times. It will lose track in long conversations. So if your conversation is long and complex, it may not remember what was going on at the beginning. It will lose track. So you can periodically summarize. Here we have got so far. You can use numbered steps, or you start a new conversation, just cut and paste it across. I tend to restart the conversation in a clean conversation. And you can actually cut and paste it, or you can write the old one to a document and upload it. There's no ways around this. But you'll see some strange answers coming out at the end, and you know you've probably reached the limit of its memory in that term. And now, so let me really quickly just give you a couple of examples of some of the things I've been talking about here. And one thing I wanted to look at was the logic, and I won't show you the actual chat here because it's very long, but I was trying to do a shift pattern within ChatGPT for 6 engineers. And there was a number of rules that could cover 24 hours of 6 engineers, the shift pattern. Basically, I gave ChatGPT a number of rules. And one of the rules was that the engineers had to have at least 11 hours of rest between shifts. And you can see from the answer it gave me, and this is one of many answers it tried to give me, is that it has the engineers on back-to-back shifts, obviously no rest whatsoever. And no matter what I did within ChatGPT, and I was using a large language model here, I couldn't get it to understand. I couldn't get it to say it was not possible to do it. It kept trying to do it and failing. So that's a an obvious way that you can look at complex problems. I wouldn't give this to a large language model. I'd look at the logic engine and see if it comes up. The second one is an example of the fluff, and this is from Ancestry. And for all the Ancestry users, it's got its own inbuilt Explore records with AI, and this is one of my relatives in the 1911 English census. And if you click on Explore records with AI here, you see this. It comes up with a little narrative. And if we look at the narrative, it's just adds some stuff in there for no apparent reason, and it does this all the time in Ancestry AI. It says in the bustling town of West Ham, Essex. Well, West Ham is not a town, it's a suburb of London. It may be bustling, but it's probably not, I don't know. It created a lively household of 6. Well, maybe it wasn't a lively household, maybe people were ill, maybe it was a sad household. And then it said Thomas Glasson added an extra dynamic to their daily lives, the close-knit family. Well, maybe they weren't close-knit. Maybe they didn't get on at all. So you can see this is where AI is adding context in there and extra details that are not necessary and actually can throw you off completely. And I see an awful lot of people using this as part of their genealogy story, and it really is not a very good way of using it. And Ancestry and some of the other AI genealogy engines are using it in this way, and it's quite annoying, to be honest with you. And then finally, I want to look at one where it's making stuff up, so I'm just going to go out of here. So I've uploaded this document for one of my ancestors that fought in the First World War, and it's pretty badly written, and it's going to be a struggle for generative AI to read this because of the cursive, and it's pretty badly written, as I say. And what I can do is I can ask generative AI to look at this, and I've basically asked it to transcribe the entry. Now it goes through some good stuff, but here at the end it has a ship here called Ben Macherie, and that wasn't mentioned at all. It just made this up completely for whatever reason. And it goes through and it keeps going on about this ship called Ben Macherie. The ship actually did exist, but the ship sank in 1917. So not only did my ancestor not have that mentioned on his card here, the ship had sank by this time. No idea how generative AI made this up. This is a true hallucination, and it goes through and actually creates a whole story around that he was on here. And when he was on, Ben Macherie was part of critical missions, but then it said it was sunk in 1917, and then after the crew. So it tried to justify it, the history. I tried to give it, can you give me more of the history? And it was built of a ferry. It gives me a lot of information, and it actually knows it was sank in 1917. But it really then tried to justify that my relative was on there by saying, well, maybe he was involved in the salvage or scrap. He wasn't involved in any of that. He was on a shore base. So this is a typical, I would say, you see this from time to time where it just made something up and it continues insisting that's correct. So what I would have to do here is really restart this conversation completely, or change my prompt, or do something, maybe look at the cursive myself. So there are 3 quick examples of what can go wrong. We've looked at a few more. So getting to be a very long video here, so I'll stop it at that. I hope you found it useful to see what can go wrong with generative AI. It's still a wonderful tool, so please use it. I think if you know what can go wrong, you're best positioned to use it more effectively. If you like this video, please give me 2 thumbs up. It's really important for a small video channel like mine, and really remember to subscribe to see more videos. I'll bring out 3 or 4 a month. Good luck researching. Try and use generative AI. Please let me know in the comments how it's working for you, and have a great day.